Welcome to the Institute of Museum and Library Services, Office of Museum Services, Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program Applicant Information Session. The goal of this video is to provide an overview of our Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program, which we call NANH for short, and the process of preparing an application for funding. This video is organized into 6 chapters. What is the Native American, Native Hawaiian Museum Services Grant Program? This section explains the purpose and eligibility criteria of the NANH grant program. What do NANH grants fund? This section explains the types of projects that can be funded in NANH and the amount of funds that can be requested. Application components. This section describes the types of documents that are needed to create an NANH grant application. Application components narrative provides guidance on composing the narrative part of the application. Application components budget. This section provides details on the information to include in your project budget. Application tips and next steps. The concluding section provides a few tips and next steps. The complete set of instructions for how to prepare and submit an NANH grant application are found in the Notice of Funding Opportunity published on grants.gov and available on the IMLS website. Please refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for the most detailed information to prepare your application. To get the most out of this video, we recommend that you watch it in its entirety. This will give you an understanding of the NANH grant program, the types of projects that can be funded, and the necessary application components. You may also want to review the NANH Notice of Funding Opportunity before, during, or after you watch the video. Notices of Funding Opportunities, also known as NOFOs, are documents that detail the requirements of each of our grant programs. All of our NOFOs can be found via imls.gov/grants. As you navigate the application process, you can use this video as a reference tool. If you'd like to skip to a specific section, please use the time bar below or the links in the description box to navigate the chapters. In this section, we will answer the question, what is NANH? Providing information on the purpose and intent of this grant program and who it is designed to serve. The overall goal of the NANH program is to build the capacity of Native American tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations to provide museum services to their communities in order to help their heritage, culture, and knowledge thrive. Some, but not all of the ways tribes and Native Hawaiian organizations might do this are through educational services and programs, professional development, organizational capacity building, community engagement, and collection stewardship. It's important to note, however, that applicants do not have to have a physical museum or cultural center constructed in order to provide museum services to your communities. The NANH program has unique eligibility criteria from other museum grant programs offered at IMLS. Specifically, in order to be eligible for an award under this program, the lead or legal applicant must be either a federally recognized Indian tribe, which includes Alaska Native villages and corporations, or a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians. Our definitions of eligible tribal organizations can be found on our IMLS eligibility criteria webpage linked here or within the Notice of Funding Opportunity for this program. Other entities such as museums, libraries, cultural centers, schools, tribal colleges, or other nonprofits are not eligible to apply on their own to this program. The eligible applicants listed here are welcome to collaborate with or apply on behalf of those other entities. But as the lead applicant for the grant, they must meet the eligibility criteria and administer the award. So while the lead applicant must be the tribe, Alaska Native Village or Corporation, or Native Hawaiian Serving Organization, we understand that when it comes to actually carrying out a project, that work is often done at an org unit level or by a partnering or collaborating organization, such as a tribal museum or a nonprofit foundation. Although they may not serve as lead applicants, partner organizations may be heavily involved in the administration of a project and may serve as the key project staff. It is important that the partner organization have an established relationship with the tribal administration before applying for the grant, because the tribe is ultimately fiscally and legally responsible for the management of the grant. The assumption in such a partnership is that the Native community that applies for the grant is directly served and benefits from the grant activities that are carried out by any partners. In this section, we will answer the question, what does the NANH program fund? Providing details on the types of projects and objectives within the NANH grant program. NANH grants are designed to support project-based activities. The Project Management Institute defines project as a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. A project is temporary because it has a defined beginning and end in time, and therefore a defined scope and resources. And a project is unique in that it is not a routine operation, but rather a specific set of activities designed to accomplish a singular goal. We recommend that you keep this definition in mind as you conceptualize your NANH project. Think of it as a temporary, non-routine set of activities which collectively have a beginning and an end, a defined scope requiring specific resources, and which are designed to accomplish a specific singular goal. So while we can fund programs, activities, and positions that are already established or ongoing, applicants should be careful to frame their projects so they do not cross over into general operations. NANH projects must be at least 1 year, but no more than 3 years in length. Let's look further at what characteristics are most often seen in successful NANH applications. First, institutional impact. Your project should address a key need or challenge that faces your tribe or organization. Second, in-depth knowledge. Your proposal should reflect a thorough understanding of current practice and knowledge about the subject matter. Third, project-based design. Your project work plan should consist of a set of logical, interrelated activities tied directly to addressing the key need or challenge you've identified. And fourth, demonstrable results. Your project should generate measurable results that tie directly to the need or challenge it was designed to address. Usually, unfunded applications fail to deliver convincingly on one or more of these areas, so it is a good idea to make sure your application shows how your project will be strong in each. Again, the overarching goal of the NANH program is to build the capacity of Native American tribes, including Alaska Native villages and corporations, as well as Native Hawaiian organizations, to provide museum services to their communities. Under this main goal are 3 objectives: support the preservation and perpetuation of Indigenous languages and cultural practices, support the professional development of the workforce of Indigenous museums, and support the management and care of Indigenous collections and their associated documentation. You should align your proposed project with the one objective that best fits and clearly identify which one you have chosen in your application narrative. This goal and these objectives may seem broad, and that's on purpose. You should choose the one that is most closely aligned with the key need or challenge you plan to address in your project. Many projects have components that touch on 2 or even all 3 of these objectives. For example, you might be planning to digitize a collection because you want to share the valuable historical and cultural information it contains with your community members, and you're going to train your tribal museum staff on the latest digitization techniques in the process. This project could fit under any one of these 3 objectives. Since you must pick one, you should think about which objective is the most central to your project overall. Ask yourself, what activities do you plan to carry out? What outcomes do you want to achieve, and who will benefit from your work? For projects focused on preserving and perpetuating language or cultural practices, think through who your primary audience is and what their needs are. What do you want them to learn or accomplish, and what's the best way to go about that? For professional development and capacity building, what does a successful outcome look like for your tribe or institution? Is it recruiting and training more staff, paid interns? enhancing technology, such as your website or upgrading your software, or perhaps strategic planning. For projects focused on collection stewardship or conservation, what are the collections you'll be working with and what is their current situation or condition? How will that be addressed or improved? This is a list of some of the types of project activities we can fund under the NANH program, but it is not exhaustive. We invite you to develop and apply for projects that best meet your tribe's or organization's needs. Again, you're not required to have a physical museum or cultural center established in order to provide these types of services. Whatever activities you have in mind, you should be sure to describe them thoroughly and show how they will logically progress to meet your chosen objective. You should be cautious about trying to cram too many different types of activities into the same proposal. Just because they all might fit under the overarching goal of the NANH program doesn't mean you should try to do them all at once. You can certainly have a project that is multifaceted or that has multiple complementary components if that's what makes the most sense for you and they all tie back to your chosen objective. However, the strongest proposals are clearly defined projects with logical, interrelated activities that have manageable scopes, budgets, and timelines. It's okay to be ambitious, but remember, we want to set our grantees up for success, so we would rather you underpromise and overdeliver rather than overpromise and underdeliver. There's no limit to the number of applications you could submit in response to the funding announcement for the NANH program. However, if you do submit multiple applications, they must be for separate and discrete projects, meaning they must not overlap in terms of staffing or costs. For example, you could submit a proposal to support your language revitalization program, as well as a separate proposal to inventory and rehouse your basket collection. Likewise, if you have an existing open NANH award, that does not prevent you from applying for a new award this round, again, as long as the projects do not overlap. You'll want to consider your tribe's or organization's capacity, not just to write and submit multiple strong proposals, but then to manage multiple federal awards at once. Demonstrating that you have the internal, administrative, and financial controls necessary to track and maintain multiple federal awards simultaneously will be important. NANH supports projects of all sizes, but there is a specific range of funding available. You can request a minimum of $5,000 to a maximum of $250,000 in federal funds. If you ask for less than $5,000 or more than $250,000 in federal grant funds, your application may be rejected and not reviewed. Your budget should be aligned to the scope and scale of your project and should include all costs necessary to complete the proposed activities. In the NANH grant program, project budgets are not required to have any non-federal cost share, though you may include it if you want. Cost share is not considered in the review of NANH applications. It's important to note that if you decide to include cost share in your budget and you receive an award, you will be required to meet your cost share commitment by the end of the award period. Cost share is any portion of project costs not paid by IMLS funds and may be in the form of cash, staff or volunteer time, or other third-party contributions. Cost share may not include funds from another federal source. On the IMLS website, you can use the Search Awarded Grants function to explore our archive of grants that we have awarded in past years. You can search this database using a variety of criteria, such as institution name, location, and keyword, and you can filter it by grant program. Your search will retrieve basic information about each award, including the amount of federal funds awarded and a brief description of the proposed activities and expected results for each project. We've also posted some examples of successful application narratives from recent years on our website. To find these, go to the sample applications page on the IMLS website and scroll down the page to find the NANH examples. Looking at these proposals will show you what a strong proposal might look like and might help you clarify your thinking about your own project. In this section, we will introduce the components of an NANH grant application. The NANH Notice of Funding Opportunity, NOFO, includes a complete list of all the application components and indicates which documents are required, conditionally required, or optional supporting documents. These are the required documents. All applications must include all of the documents listed here. Omission of even just one might result in your application's rejection. The SF424S application form and the IMLS Museum Program Information Form, both starred on this list, are completed as fillable forms within the grants.gov workspace. The rest of the application components must be created by you and saved as PDFs to be uploaded with your application package in grants.gov. Please note, there is a 7-page limit for the narrative. If you exceed that page limit, we must remove the extra pages before your application goes out for review. That means your reviewers may see a paragraph or sentence cut off in midair and won't see any information contained within the excess pages. So make sure your content fits into the page limit specified and double check the number of pages is still correct after you convert your documents to PDFs. The second category of application components is that of conditionally required documents. Some applicants must include one, two, or all of these, and it's important that you know which are required for your application. If you are a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians, then you must include your proof of nonprofit status letter issued by the IRS, as well as appropriate proof of eligibility documentation outlined in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate in your budget, then you must include a copy of your current final rate agreement. If you create any digital products during the course of your project, then you must complete and submit a digital products plan. The term digital product includes any digitized and born digital content, resources or assets, software, or data. If you are creating any of these types of materials, basically anything digital, you must include the digital products plan with your application. If you are requesting support for conservation treatments for collections objects, then you must include detailed condition reports and/or formal conservation treatment proposals. Just like the required documents, omission of even one of these can result in the exclusion of your application from further consideration. The third group of application components is supporting documents. And here's a partial list of examples. Supporting documents are optional, although some are strongly recommended depending on your project. We urge you to make good decisions and include things that will supplement your proposal. Supporting documents should not introduce new information. Rather, as their name suggests, they should support your project justification, work plan, and intended results that you spell out in your application narrative. For example, have you identified a partner whose involvement is key to the project's success? If so, a letter of support or commitment is a crucial element to reassure reviewers that they are on board and the project will succeed. Similarly, documentation showing the buy-in of your leadership, such as a tribal resolution, can be a great way to show support, though again, it's not required. Pictures can help give reviewers who may not be familiar with your institution, programs, collections, or community a better idea of what you're describing within your narrative. Vendor quotes or equipment specifications show that you've done some of the legwork in getting appropriate estimates for project costs. We recommend that you be respectful of your reviewers' time and avoid including hundreds of pages of extraneous materials that are not directly relevant to your project. Being judicious really does work to your benefit, as supporting documents can make or break an application. Please include what is important and helpful and stop there. In the following sections of this presentation, we will focus on two of the key required application components, the project narrative and the project budget. Refer to the Notice of Funding Opportunity for complete instructions on how to prepare and complete all of the other application components. So in this section, we will go over the questions you will need to answer in your project narrative and offer details on the review criteria associated with each section. The sections of the narrative are the project justification, project work plan, and project results. The narrative is the heart of your proposal, and the NOFO provides lengthy guidance on what it should cover and how it should be formatted with these 3 sections. The first section is your project justification. This section should clearly identify which program objective your project supports, as well as how it will support the overall NANH program goal of strengthening your tribe's or organization's ability to provide museum services to your community. What need, problem, or challenge will your project address, and how was it identified? Describe how you've used demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, or other relevant data to define your need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. Who's the primary audience for your project and how have they been involved in the planning? Primary audience, sometimes also called target group, refers to those who will be most immediately and positively affected by your project. Identify the number of individuals in your primary audience or in each group if you identify more than one. Who are the ultimate beneficiaries for this project? Beneficiaries refers to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same people as your primary audience. Identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term, if you can. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. And finally, if your project involves collections, be sure to describe and quantify them. In section 6 of the Notice of Funding Opportunity, under peer review criteria, you will find a list of questions that reviewers are asked to answer when they review your proposal. It's a good idea to refer to these as you write your narrative to be certain you are providing reviewers clear, solid information. You will see that their criteria correspond directly to the prompts you are given to write your narrative. One of the prompts in the project justification section of the narrative is the identification of the need, problem, or challenge your project addresses. It is foundational in your application, so keep these points in mind. The federal government wants its investment to result in something getting better. So as you define your need, problem, or challenge, articulate what will get better as a result of your project as precisely as possible. Will someone learn something, develop a skill, change an attitude? Will members of your community be better able to work together to solve problems? Will collections be better cared for and their lifespan extended? Will access to your collections and the information surrounding them be expanded? Identify why is it important that this particular change happens. In other words, why should people care? Hone your problem definition carefully in clear, succinct terms, and gather and present data that support your problem definition. If the project justification section was the why, the project work plan section is where you identify the who, what, when, and how. Who will do what activities when and using what resources. You should explain how you will track your progress toward achieving your intended results and what you'll do if you need to correct course. You should also think about risks that are inherent in your particular project and to tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. I'll say a little more about risks in a few minutes. Remember, your project must be at least 1 year, 12 months, and up to 3 years, 36 months in length. Again, this is the list of questions that reviewers will look for when are asked to answer for this section when they review your proposal. So make sure your narrative is answering these effectively. Remember, the people reading and scoring your application may not be familiar with your specific history, institution, collection, etc. So don't be vague. You want to provide enough detail to reassure them that your project is manageable and can be accomplished with the staff time and resources allocated. Your work plan will be built on activities, so it's important to be clear about what an activity is. An activity is something that someone does. It has a beginning and an end, just like projects, and you know when you've finished it because it doesn't need to be done anymore. It's no longer on your to-do list. An activity is not a goal, a result, or an outcome. Rather, it's something you do as part of striving to achieve those. So aim for a reasonable level of detail in identifying your activities. Too many and your work plan becomes bogged down and confusing, but too few and someone who is reading your application won't understand the who, when, what, and how of your project. You should aim for a balance. We also ask you to think about the risks that are inherent in your particular project and tell us how you've taken that into account in your planning. Think of it as answering the question, what if X doesn't go according to plan? There's no checklist of set risks, but every project has them. The best proposals will show you that you are aware of them and have thought through a plan for dealing with them. Look at your activities and think about what could go wrong. Focus on the ones where your experience tells you, yes, that could happen, and identify steps you would take in response. We know that things often go differently than expected. We just want you to prepare by identifying implementable options. Here are some examples of risks. If you intend to hire someone into a grant-funded position to work on the project activities, what will you do if it takes longer than expected to find the right candidate, bring them on board, and train them? Or a project depends on your community partners to achieve success, but what if one partner becomes unavailable? What do you do now? A project involving rehousing collections into new museum quality collection storage might run into delays in the delivery of the cabinets. What happens to the collection items then? How will you ensure that they remain safe and secure? The third section of your narrative should be devoted to articulating your intended project results. This is your chance to convince the reviewers that the activities you've spelled out in your project work plan will result in something getting better. The need or problem you identified in your project justification will be diminished or eliminated altogether. This section should logically tie the narrative together by explaining how you will know that your project has been successful and how you will measure project success. If your project will generate tangible products, and most do, here's the opportunity to describe them and make the case that they will be useful. Remember that digital products plan I mentioned as a supporting document can be useful to expand on this section if it's applicable. Last but not least, we ask that you tell us how you will sustain the benefit of the project. How will this improvement that you propose to make once your grant is over will continue? What will the longer term impact be? And again, here's the list of questions that reviewers are asked to answer when they read the project results section of your narrative. We often hear that defining intended results and success measures is challenging for applicants. Essentially, we're asking you to explain what will be better as a result of this project and how will you know. Think back to the questions we referenced in the project justification section when we talked about defining the need, problem, or challenge that your project's addressing and how it fits into one or more of the program objectives. Your results should tie back directly and logically to those elements. If you said someone will learn something, how will you show that? If your problem is related to the preservation of traditional cultural practices, how will you know when that has been successfully achieved? If you're saying collections will be better cared for, how will you be sure and how will you measure better? If you're digitizing to expand accessibility, how will you know when you've successfully done it? You may think of tangential benefits or general positive outcomes, but make sure you identify them as in addition to and not instead of your original intended results. Reviewers are likely to catch that as a disconnect. You should be specific and refrain from broad, vague, or unrealistic claims. This focus on project results and measuring success in meaningful ways is not new, but it's not necessarily easy either. There are many ways to measure success, and each situation is unique. To aid you in visualizing what success could look like for your project, we encourage you to consider using a logic model or evaluation tool to explain your intended results and your plan for achieving them. There are numerous examples and downloadable worksheets that you can find with a simple internet search. Peer reviewers who are professionals with experience working in or with Native American, Alaska Native, and Native Hawaiian communities, will be selected by IMLS to read each application and provide constructive and critical comments on the strengths and weaknesses of the proposed NANH projects. They are instructed to base their reviews only on the information contained within the application. So don't assume that a reviewer or IMLS will know something about your museum or your proposed project. To help make sure your narrative is as clear and complete as possible, follow the narrative outline in the NANH NOFO, making sure you address each prompt. Be sure to consider the review criteria associated with each section of the narrative. Use headings, subheadings, or numbered sections in your narrative to make it easy for reviewers to read. Avoid generalities, acronyms, and jargon. The people who will review your application are Native museum professionals, but they may not be familiar with your particular tribe or organization specifics. Make it easy for them to understand what you mean. Similarly, provide concrete details, or if details are TBD, state as much as you can in your narrative so reviewers don't have to guess or make assumptions about things left unsaid. An advantage to starting your application early is that you can ask a colleague to review everything with fresh eyes before you submit. Ask them to act like a reviewer who's seeing this for the first time and doesn't know any background information about your project or institution. And remember to limit that narrative to 7 pages, and please try to stick to the recommended page limits for other application components. So to recap, your narrative has 3 sections: project justification, project work plan, and project results. And you have 7 pages to answer all of the prompts. The sections are all equally important and should all logically tie together. Write clearly, address what we ask you to address, and keep an eye on those review criteria. We're telling you here exactly what the reviewers will look for, so make it easy for them to find it and understand it. In this section, we will provide information on what to include in your project budget and budget justification, and provide some examples of allowable and unallowable costs. Your budget is a critically important component of your application. This is where you specify all of the costs associated with your proposed project. The budget consists of 2 required components: the IMLS budget form and the corresponding budget justification. The IMLS budget form is a fillable PDF that accommodates up to 3 years of project activities and expenses. The budget should include the project costs that will be charged to grant funds, as well as those that will be supported by cost share, if applicable. All the items listed, whether supported by grant funds or cost share, must be necessary to accomplish project objectives, allowable according to the applicable federal cost principles, auditable, and incurred during the award period of performance. The IMLS budget form can be downloaded directly from the IMLS website and is also linked within the Notice of Funding Opportunity. As you develop your budget, keep in mind that there are certain costs that are either allowable or unallowable according to the Uniform Federal Grant Making Regulations, which are referred to as 2 CFR Part 200 for short. The NOFO contains links to these regulations. These provide important guidance on uniform administrative requirements, cost principles, and audit requirements for federal awards, so all federal grant applicants and recipients should be aware of them. Using 2 CFR 200 as a basis, we've developed a short list of some of the types of allowable costs that are common in IMLS projects. This list is not exhaustive. These costs may be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for with federal funds, or what you will pay for as part of your cost share if you include any. The rules about allowability apply equally to both, so when completing your project budget, be sure to check that all the costs you include, whether grant funds or cost share, are allowable. There are also some costs which are unallowable according to the federal regulations in 2 CFR 200. Unallowable costs may not be part of what you ask IMLS to pay for, nor can they be part of what you will pay for as part of your cost share. Unallowable expenses can't show up anywhere in your proposal. As you prepare your application, it's a good idea to compare your list of proposed expenses against these lists of allowable and unallowable costs and against the federal cost principles. If after that you have specific questions about allowability, please contact us and we'll be happy to help. In addition to the IMLS budget form, you must also prepare a budget justification. This is an opportunity to provide an explanation and justification for the project costs in a more detailed narrative format. The budget justification should correspond with the cost categories on the IMLS budget form. In the justification, you will identify each expense and show the method of cost computation used to determine each dollar amount, including any that you may have consolidated and summarized on the IMLS budget form. In other words, please show and double check your math. The NOFO contains detailed guidance on how to complete your budget form and your budget justification. You should also remember to attach any quotes or estimates as supporting documents if applicable. In this final section of our presentation, we offer some application tips and next steps based on our experiences with the NANH application submission process each year. We can only make grants to eligible applicants that submit complete applications, including attachments, on or before the deadline. So here are some tips to help you do just that. Start your application now. Don't try to pull together an entire application in 3 days. Become familiar with grant.gov's workspace. It has many useful features, including upfront validation, which allows you to correct errors prior to submission, and the opportunity to collaborate with others in creating your application. If you're not used to working with grants.gov, consider starting with their workspace overview and check out their tutorials. Make sure you're looking at and applying to the correct grant program within grants.gov. You can do a keyword search for the IMLS Native American Native Hawaiian Museum Services program, or you can enter the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance, CFDA number, which is 45.308. Make sure your application is complete. Double check it against the table of application components in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Make sure all application components are in the proper PDF format and follow the correct naming conventions. And submit to grants.gov early so you can correct any errors and avoid any issues created by slow internet or other technology challenges. It's important to get your application submitted online through grants.gov before the deadline. IMLS does not accept applications by mail or email, nor do we accept late applications. In order to register with grants.gov, you must have an active SAM.gov registration and unique entity identifier number. So make sure your registrations for both of these sites are complete, your accounts are active, and that any necessary passwords are current. These registrations expire periodically, so do not wait until it's time to hit the submit button to check on them. You should coordinate with any other staff members or departments, such as your authorized organization representative or your financial or grants office, who may hold the accounts and passwords you'll need to submit. If you have had staff turnover in the past year, that might also be a flag to double check who has access to your accounts. Both the SAM.gov and grants.gov websites have robust help features and FAQs. If you run into technical issues with either of these sites, you should reach out to their help desks and request a tracking, case, or ticket number in order to document your issue and attempts at resolving it. IMLS does not accept failure to have active SAM.gov or grants.gov registrations by the deadline as an excuse for submitting a late application. So again, start early. Here are the important dates relating to NANH applications for the FY 2025 funding cycle. We typically make the Notice of Funding Opportunity available and start accepting applications in mid-August, around 90 days before the application deadline. Applications must be received through grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on November 15th, 2024. The date is non-negotiable. The timestamp is auto-generated by the grants.gov system, and we have no ability to override it. That is why we say repeatedly to start early and submit your application early. That way, if you encounter a difficulty of any kind when submitting your proposal, you'll have some time to resolve the problem and resubmit. After the application deadline, IMLS staff will review your application for completeness and eligibility, and you will hear from us via email if there are any issues. Next, peer reviewers will read your applications and provide scores and comments based on the criteria outlined in the NANH NOFO. Then, IMLS staff will closely review your project budget and your track record with past and current grants and prepare all of the application materials for review by the IMLS director. In June 2025, we will notify you by email of the award decisions and provide the scores and comments created by the reviewers. NANH projects must be scheduled to start on July 1st, 2025, and again, may last from 1 to 3 years. Please make sure that everyone involved in preparing your grant application is aware of these dates and deadlines. As you read through the NOFO and prepare your application, you might have additional questions come up before the deadline. IMLS staff can help answer your questions about this or any of our other museum grant programs. You may contact us by email or phone. Contact information is listed on the NANH Grant Program landing page on the IMLS website. You can also schedule a counseling call to meet virtually with program staff. Use the scheduling link found on the NANH program landing page to find and book an available time slot on our calendars. You will then receive an email with a calendar invite and Microsoft Teams meeting link. Thank you very much for your interest in IMLS and in the Native American Native Hawaiian Museum Services funding opportunity. I hope you found the information in this video helpful. Good luck, and we look forward to seeing your application in November.